Lou Lamoriello didn't do enough at the trade deadline, but he says more changes are coming over the offseason. We're going to talk about what that might mean. Plus, the Islanders split their weekend games in California. We'll have all the latest on the playoff races and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. So glad you could join us today to talk a little Islanders hockey. And before we get into the weekend's 2 games, which the Islanders did split, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things Lou Lamoriello said when he finally addressed the media Saturday before the Islanders game against the San Jose Sharks. And Lou tried to explain his process, why he ended up moving Brock Nelson to Colorado and yet did not end up moving Kyle Palmeri or any of the now 9 defensemen on the Islanders roster, and, you know, any of the other veterans who in this very big sellers market could have gotten the Islanders to speed up the process of getting younger, faster, and more skilled. And part of the statement that Lou made is there will be change this summer. Until there's change, you can't say how much, but I can assure you there will be change. And then he went on to say, if we could have gotten younger and better, other than draft picks, we would have done it without question. We felt where a few of our players are, when I say a few, several of our players we could have made moves with, they would be better done at a different time. What we need to infuse in the lineup, those players would be available. That's a decision we made. Along the way, we also tried to look at this season, where 4 points out of a playoff spot, not to give up in any way whatsoever on the guys in that room without hurting the mission, was to go into the trade deadline. And it ended up the way it was. But I can assure you that if there were other players, not of the caliber we got, but close to that, there would have been a lot more moves. So here's the problem I have with Lou's approach, and I'm going to try to put together the big picture. First of all, it became abundantly clear that Lou Lamoriello did not even want to trade Brock Nelson. Brock Nelson's decision to not agree to an extension, and that included a 3-year extension at $7.5 million per year, according to published reports. That forced Lou's hand. So the problem is that this team, which has not won a playoff series in 3 years, and it's looking very much like this year will be a 4th, that, you know, unlikely they get into the playoffs, and if they do, they'd be big underdogs against whoever they'd play, whether it's Toronto, Florida, Washington, Carolina. You know, they'd be big underdogs against any of those opponents, and that's just the first round. This team is older. There are a lot of veteran guys on this roster. We know how depleted the farm system is. Bridgeport right now, worst record in the AHL. No prospects in Bridgeport when injuries hit the blue line. Now injuries hit the forward group. Nobody there to really bring up. And you had Adam Boqvist playing center against the Ducks on Sunday, which we'll talk more about later. Every Gayers understand that this is a problem that this team has had for several years now. It's nothing new. And the fact that Lou decided that the best course of action in his mind was to take a 33-year-old veteran and a 34-year-old veteran and try to keep them here for longer when the market was so much a seller's market is very, very disappointing. And to Lou Lamoriello's credit, he got a good return from Brock Nelson once he was more or less forced to trade him. But he could have gotten at least a second-round pick for Kyle Palmeri. Could have certainly gotten, more for players like J.G. Pageau, Anders Lee. Rumors that teams were interested in Scott Mayfield. You have the glut of defensemen. Whether you're going to re-sign, you can't re-sign all of them realistically. So you could have traded Tony DeAngelo or Adam Boqvist or Scott Perunovich or, maybe Mayfield or maybe, Pelech or Polak if they would waive their no trade clauses. There were many different options. And when Lou made his statement Saturday, keep in mind, ownership, Malkin had flown in to San Jose to meet with Lou and speak to the team, or at least be with the team, before Lou Lamoriello made his press conference. And so what I'm wondering is, to what extent, if any, did Malkin come in and say to Lou, we need to make some changes here? It is encouraging on the one hand to hear Lou say, yeah, more changes needed. We need to, make this team younger and faster. And yeah, but Lou, number one, you should have been saying that a year and a half ago at the latest. Okay, let's start with that. Number two, your actions before the trade deadline speak to the opposite of that, because you tried to re-sign both Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmeri, which in the big scheme of things just doesn't make a lot of sense. And I understand you want to get into the playoffs this year, that, for ownership, 2 home games, maybe 3, would be worth, a few $1 million per game into their coffers. I get it. And it's always, better for team morale, I guess, to say, yeah, we made the playoffs again, even if we lost in 4, 5, 6 games, whatever the case is likely to be. But you're in this business to win championships. You want to maximize your team's chance to win a Stanley Cup. And while there is, if you are the second wild card team or the first wild card team, yes, you have that little infinitesimal chance of getting hot and winning a Stanley Cup. Your best chance of doing that is to actually build a team that would be considered one of the top 3, 5, 6 teams in the league and compete. Even if the Islanders get into the playoffs, which team has a better chance of winning the Cup? The Colorado Avalanche, the Florida Panthers, the Dallas Stars, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Washington Capitals, the Carolina Hurricanes, or the New York Islanders? And out of all those teams I listed, and I could add the Winnipeg Jets and several other teams to that list, you're already going 8, 9 teams. And believe me, the Devils are better than the Islanders, even with the injuries they have. Tampa Bay, clearly better. Minnesota, clearly better. Yeah, you'd be in it, but it just isn't realistic. So to quote Bruce Springsteen, or to paraphrase Bruce Springsteen, if you were to sign Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmeri to extensions, both of them, and not have acquired anybody at this trade deadline, which is what Lou intended to do, you may be taking one step up in the short term, but it's one step up, 2 steps back, because the team will get older. You already don't have a lot of prospects in your system. The ones you do have prior to the trade of Brock Nelson, especially, are 2 to 3 years away. And you need to make this team better. You can chase your tail trying to get to 8th place in the conference, and maybe you'll get there. Right now, they got there, 3 of the last 4 years, but they don't win in the playoffs. And the core is getting older. The guys who were scoring goals, Anders Lee, Brock Nelson, Kyle Palmeri, they're all in their, pushing their mid-30s. You hold on to them. You have to understand, Kyle Palmeri in 2 or 3 years is unlikely to be as good as he is right now. And you can pay him, $4, $5, whatever $million a year, but you're not going to get the same Kyle Palmeri, most likely, that you have now. He's going to be a little slower. He may get injured more often. He's not going to be as productive. I'm not making this up. I'm not hating on Kyle Palmeri. I'm talking about statistical evidence that as players get to be 32, 33, 34, 35, injuries are more likely, they take longer to heal from, and eventually, statistically, father time is undefeated and your production dips. It's just the way things work. And there are players who are the exception to the rule, but the exception kind of proves the rule because, 9 times out of 10 or 95 times out of 100, whatever number you want to put together, guys who are in their mid-30s see their production drop. And if you realize that this core has maxed out, that those 2 trips to the conference final, and keep in mind the Islanders barely made the playoffs those 2 years also, this group has maxed out, and it is time to get younger, faster, and more skilled. You don't do that by re-signing 33 and 34-year-old forwards. And if it means you don't make the playoffs this year, but you recoup draft picks, players who can step in right now, players who are a year away, let's say, prospects who can be highly regarded, that's how you get this team to take 1 step back to take 2 steps forward instead of 1 step forward to take 2 or maybe even 3 steps back. So Lou's statements are confusing to a point. They're baffling. They're kind of ambiguous, but Lou is always ambiguous, more or less, when he speaks to the media. And the proof is in the pudding. So, okay. First of all, it definitely sounds like Lou plans on staying beyond this season as the general manager or in the organization. And second of all, it sounds like I'll believe the trades and the changes that Lou has said are coming when they happen. And the one thing you don't want to see as a fan is Lou shrug his shoulders and say, well, we tried, but there was no good offer out there. We need change. Things have to change. If insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, fans are tired of insanity with this organization. And now let's see if Lou puts his actions behind his words and does make significant changes to this roster over the offseason as he promised. All right. More to get to on today's show. We are going to talk about both Saturday's win in San Jose and Sunday's loss in Anaheim as the road trip continues. And for our Islanders' birthday of the day, a 6'6" defenseman who was with the Islanders in the late 2000s. Let's see if you can guess who that is. All that and more next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It makes the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell option, they are a classic favorite. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. That's wonderfulpistachios.com. So Saturday night, the Islanders in San Jose, first game after the trade. And boy, oh boy, was that first period, especially let's say the first 10 minutes. The Islanders were being outshot 20-3 at one point. They were on their heels, and Ilya Sorokin, who ended the game with 38 saves, did a really good job of taking a team that was just not ready to play at the opening faceoff. And keep in mind, the Sharks are the team with the worst record in the league entering this game. And the Islanders were on their heels. But the Islanders did get going and led, even though they were dominated in the first period, led 2-0. Great to see Anthony Duclair score. Islanders had 2 power play goals, one by Duclair, one by Adam Boqvist. That was encouraging to see. And, you know, you had some of the guys who we know needed to step up, stepping up. Duclair, we spoke about the need for him to be more productive, and it was good to see him score that first goal. Simon Holmstrom with a couple of assists in this game. We talked about the need of Holmstrom to step up. J.G. Pageau had a goal. Anders Lee had a goal. These are the kinds of things we needed to see in this game. And to the Islanders' credit, they survived that rather ugly first period and managed to get on track and play well enough to beat a young, inexperienced, and inconsistent at best San Jose Sharks team. And look, they win 4-2, but the last Sharks goal came, you know, after it's 4-1 with a minute and a half left. Hero and GOAT of this game, well, let's say the hero, I got to go with 2 players, J.G. Pageau with a 3-point night, a goal and 2 assists, and then obviously Sorokin with the 38 saves, including, you know, an amazing first period that the Islanders easily could have been down 3 or 4-0 before anything happened. So those would be my heroes. Go to the game I'm giving to the penalty kill. And look, that's the win over San Jose was encouraging because A, Sorokin was on his A game, and B, because the team woke up after a slow start and took care of business. They did make some moves. Mike Riley, Matt Martin, both activated off IR, Riley off LTIR, and Marcus Hogberg was activated off IR. Now, he was activated on Sunday, so he wasn't the backup. It was still Jakub Skarek backing up Sorokin on Saturday night. But overall, the Islanders Saturday wasn't pretty, wasn't a great performance, but it was good enough. And at this point, you know, the old expression in hockey, they don't ask how, they just ask how many. You got the 2 points. And that is really the most important thing from an Islanders perspective. The fact that you got your players, you know, starting to get them healthy again, that is a good thing. It's official, by the way, Matt Martin not going to get 1,000 games this year. The fact that he is back off IR but remained a scratch both Saturday and Sunday closes the door on that. So if Matty Martz is going to get to 1,000 games, it's going to happen by him making a roster somewhere next year, whether that's with the Islanders or with another team. But happy to get the 2 points. You're on the road. You're playing against, again, the team with the worst record in the league, and you found a way to get the job done, and that was encouraging. And I think you also have to take into consideration the emotion surrounding the last week or so. Almost losing Kyle Palmeri for the guys in this locker room, and losing Brock Nelson, who's been with the team for more than a decade, who was an integral part of this era of Islanders hockey, and their 2 trips to the conference final in 2020 and 2021, and a leader in the locker room. Look, you could sit there and say, okay, it's your job, go out and do it, and I get it. But if you've ever been in the office when, the day after somebody moved away, let's say your best friend moved to California, or in this case to Colorado, or, there was a tragedy in the family. Yeah, you can show up for work, but are you going to be on your A game? So, yeah, these guys are human. I get it. And to their credit, they came through and beat the San Jose Sharks. So I was encouraged by that win. And I think that the Islanders, pulled closer in the standings, where that second wild card spot, it was not that far off. It was all within reach, and it really was encouraging. And then you have to turn around and play again on Sunday. And, well, we're going to talk about how the Islanders did on Sunday and what that game says about this team coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by Factor. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. I love how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. I recently tried their Protein Plus meals. They were packed with flavor and kept me full throughout the day. And the convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off and use code LockedOnNHL50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LockedOnNHL50 off at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Sunday. Just wasn't there for the Islanders. From the opening faceoff, you knew this team was tired or out of sync or just didn't have the energy level. And look, Kyle McLean, ill, not available. What do the Islanders do instead of calling up a player? And I get it. You're halfway across the country. May not have been logistically possible to get a player out there on time. But the Islanders end up playing Adam Boqvist at center. And Boqvist got an assist in this game. And look, I give him credit for stepping up, trying to help the team. Absolutely. I get it. And I think that was great. But again, you didn't put Matt Martin into the lineup. You couldn't put Kyle McLean into the lineup. You have some guys who could play center, but that's not what they did. And the problem was, from the opening faceoff on, the Islanders just looked a step slow. They didn't have the speed, the energy, the drive that you need to win a hockey game like this. And if it wasn't for the goal by Tony DeAngelo in the last 5 minutes of the game, they would have been shut out. And Lucas Dostal played a very strong game for the Ducks. Marcus Hogberg played well for the Islanders, but on defense, how often did we see the Islanders defensemen backing up, giving players like Sam Colangelo, who scored twice, one of them into an empty net, but that first goal, you just kept giving him room and giving him time. And we saw again some questionable defense by Noah Dobson. We saw Scott Mayfield make a mistake on defense. And I'm not trying to single out any one guy because Romanov, who's been one of their better defensive players all year, he didn't have a great game defensively. There really wasn't a lot of energy, speed. The passes weren't connecting on offense. Defensively, they just were standing still. And really, if it wasn't for Marcus Hogberg, who was playing his first game since returning from injury, this easily could have been a lot worse than 4-1. The penalty kill is a problem. And I mentioned they gave up two power play goals against the Sharks. They gave up another one against the Ducks. And just, again, not looking like they were ready. And this is what this team's problem has been all year long. They can put together a solid effort and then follow it up with an absolute snooze fest where they just didn't look like at puck drop they were ready to go. And you've got to be ready. If you're in this playoff hunt and there's only so many games left on your schedule, here the Islanders had a chance with a win to pass 3 teams in the standings. They could have passed Boston, Montreal, and Detroit, and they blew it. And they could have been 3 points behind Columbus. 5 points behind Columbus, but 4 points behind Ottawa. And they would have closed that gap to 2 points and 3 points with a win. The Ducks are not as bad as everyone, thinks of them. They were bad for a while, but the Ducks, they're kind of like the Islanders of the West. They're in the middle. The difference being the Ducks are on the ascension. The Islanders are older and getting slower. But this is one of those games where if you're going to make the playoffs, you've got to win. And the Islanders just didn't have it in them to win, let alone to play well. I would have settled for a loss or an overtime loss. If you show me something, they didn't show me something. And that was the disappointing factor in this game. Hero of the game, I'm going to split it between Hogberg and DeAngelo. Go to the game. I just think the team just didn't show up. It didn't have that spark. And the inconsistency of this team is going to be their undoing. And whether they were tired because of the clock change and the West Coast change, time zone change, and the back-to-back, all of those things could be true, but you need to be better than the Islanders were Sunday night. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And today is the 50th birthday of former Islanders defenseman Andy Sutton, the Kingston, Ontario native, 6'6", 245 pounds, 4 years at Michigan Tech, made his NHL debut with the Sharks in 1998-99. Later played for the Wild and the Thrashers, and then joined the Islanders in the 07-08 season. Had 2.5 seasons on the island, and then was traded to the Ottawa Senators late in the 2009-2010 season. Played 1 season with the Ducks and 1 season with the Oilers before hanging up his skates. 38 goals and 150 points in 676 career NHL games, 1,185 penalty minutes. He only played 11 playoff games in his career, none with the Islanders, and he had 20 penalty minutes in those games. He was a big physical defenseman. One of his better games with the Islanders, October 21st, 2009. Islanders hosting the Hurricanes at the Nassau Coliseum. Cam Ward in goal for Carolina. Dwayne Rollison, Rolly the goalie, in between the pipes for the Islanders. And in this game, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Andy Sutton sets up Matt Molson to kick off the scoring in the first period. That made it 1-0 Islanders. And then in the second period, with the Islanders up 2-1, Sutton gets his second goal of the year, assist to Blake Como and Jack Hillen. That made it 3-1 Islanders. But in the third period, Carolina gets 2 goals, one by Eric Stahl, one by Jussi Jokinen to tie it. It goes to a shootout, and the Islanders end up winning it as, well, Jeff Tambellini, Franz Nielsen, and John Tavares all score for the Islanders. Dwayne Rollison, 35 saves for the Islanders. But in the end, Andy Sutton, our Islanders' birthday of the day, he had a goal and an assist. He was a +1. He scored on his only shot, and he played 18 minutes and 8 seconds. Andy Sutton is our Islanders' birthday of the day. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to discuss. We're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars and NYR VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So join me for some instant insight and analysis, and it's great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. We will be back tomorrow as we preview Tuesday's game against the LA Kings. We'll also have the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.